ब्रह्माच लोकाधिपति सहम्पति कतंजलि अंधिवरम अयाचथा संतिधा सत्तापरा जक्खा जातिका देसेतु धम्मम अनुकंपिमम पजम. The Brahma god Sahampati, Lord of the world, with palms joined in reverence, requested a favor. Beings are here with but little dust in their eyes. Pray, teach the Dhamma out of compassion for them.
It's okay, you don't have to worry. She's done it. So you can put your books to one side and just relax, and I will offer some reflections on the Buddha's teachings. And we usually begin just with a short invocation, which I will chant. You don't have to, you just listen. You don't have to worry about finding the place or anything. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this custom of asking for an evening desana has become very much part of the retreat structure within our tradition. And Deepti made the formal request. In fact, we're not really supposed to, monks and nuns aren't supposed to give teachings unless they're formally invited to. It's not a religion where we go around telling people the good news, even if they don't particularly want to hear it. So there has to be a very, very clear request, and then in response to that, somebody will offer some teachings. In fact, I've been offering quite a lot of teachings already, but I assumed that since I was invited and somebody provided an aeroplane ticket, that was enough of an invitation, enough of an indication that there were people who were interested. But we still like to do the formal request, and it's something that other people can do. So if anybody feels that they would like to do that, maybe they let you know, and you can also you can chant it. There are the ways of chanting it, and you can be a little bit creative around it if you want to. But as it was, Deepti did a very, very nice, very clear invitation, reminding us of the time after the Buddha's enlightenment, when he was reflecting on his insight, reflecting on his understanding. And one of the things that he realized was that really most of humanity was really involved in the world and really probably wouldn't really understand what he was trying to what he'd understood, and even if they did understand, might not be so interested in letting go of their conditioned ways of seeing and doing things. And according to the scriptures, there was he had a kind of doubt in his mind about whether to try to share his understanding with anybody else. And according to the legend, the Brahma god Sahampati, a very, very high god, got wind of this. He was watching closely what the newly enlightened Buddha was doing, and he was quite excited about it. And when he saw that the Buddha was actually, having some doubts about whether to teach, the Brahma god Sahampati realized that he just had to intervene. And it said, as quick as a strong man might straighten his arm or flex his arm, he appeared before the Buddha in the human realm and said, please, there are beings with but a little dust in their eyes. Please, just out of compassion for them, share your understanding, share your teachings, share what you've learned. And so fortunately for us, the Buddha agreed and undertook to convey as best he could some of what he'd learned. And the first people he was going to teach were his former teachers, because he could he had a power. He could see who might be able to understand. And the first people he thought of were his first teachers. But each of them, he realized, had actually passed away quite recently. So he thought, okay, well, maybe the people who I've been practicing with. There were 5 ascetics who had practiced alongside him, doing all kinds of amazing austerities in an effort to come to that place of peace, that place of liberation from all suffering. And the Buddha, well, he was Siddhartha Gautama at that time, had applied himself assiduously to these austerities, really put a lot of effort. And he realized he hadn't really got very far. He got to the point of death. He managed that through extreme fasting. He was extremely emaciated, but he realized his mind was still just as agitated and just as far from that state of sublime peace that he knew was possible. And so at that point, fortunately, somebody came along and offered him some milk rice. The milkmaid Sujata came and appeared and offered him milk rice, and he accepted it. Not out of greed, but out of compassion for his body. He realized that being so emaciated, with such a state of bodily stress, he wasn't really going to get very far. He hadn't really got very far. And so he decided to take the milk rice, to eat the milk rice, and gradually he regained a bit of bodily strength. And it was that enabled him on the full moon of May, 2,600 years ago, to come to that state of perfect understanding. And so these 5 ascetics who he had practiced with, they'd actually left. When they saw him taking milk rice, they thought, well, he's given up. He's given up the struggle. He's reverted to luxury. He's had a bowl of rice. So, we'll let him do what he does and we'll carry on with our austere practices. That's what they did. And so they were a little bit disappointed that Siddhartha Gautama had eaten something. They were not impressed. However, the newly enlightened Buddha, he could see that actually they had come quite far in their practice, and that they probably could understand. And so he went to find where they were in Sarnath, near Varanasi. He walked there from Bodh Gaya, where he was enlightened, and he walked and saw them in the distance. They saw him coming, and they thought, well, that's Siddhartha. He's given up. We'll not really bother to show respect, or he can come and sit down if he wants to, but he can come and join us if he wants to, but we won't bother to greet him respectfully or show him respect. And so that's what they agreed. However, as the Buddha approached, there was something about his bearing, something about the way he carried himself, something about his whole manner that just inspired awe, that inspired respect. And so, in spite of themselves, they prepared a seat, they got water, they washed his feet, they greeted him respectfully. And the Buddha sat down and he said to them, "Bhikkhus, the deathless has been found. I have found the deathless." And they didn't really believe him. They said, "How can you possibly have done that? You had some rice. You've given up on the struggle. You can't possibly have done that." And he said again, "Because I have found the deathless. Listen, and I'll tell you about it." And they said, "Oh, no." And it was a third time. He said, "A third time, I tell you, monks, have you heard me speak like this before?" "No, Lord." "Okay, listen. I've found the deathless, and I'll tell you about it. Please listen." And so he offered his first teaching, which we call the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And I think probably many of you are familiar with this, teaching on the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. And so I'm always rather grateful to the Brahma God Sahampati for coming and making sure that the Buddha passed on his understanding to others. This teaching that he gave on the Four Noble Truths, the five companions, they listened attentively, and one of them actually understood what it was he was pointing to. And one of the things that I always enjoy about this sutta is that it's quite long, and it's quite a long exposition on the Noble Truths and the different ways of different stages of realization. And then when it comes to what Kandanya had understood, just one simple sentence: everything that has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. That was what he realized. And with that realization, all the Devas got really excited, because this was the transmission of the Wheel of Dharma. The Wheel of Dharma was set rolling in the Diyapaka Disipatana, and the Devas rejoiced, and each level of the Devas, they passed it up to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, right up to the Brahmaloka that Kandanya had understood. What I like about it is that this understanding, everything that has the nature to arise has the nature to cease, is something that we could all miss, couldn't we? It sounds so simple, so ordinary. You think, yes, of course. What was special about it? So I find it makes me ask that question: what is special about it? Why does it matter? Who cares? Really to look into what it is, what's special, what's important about this utterance. Everything that has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. The way that it's, the shorthand for that is anicca, that all conditioned things are impermanent. They're all in a state of continuous flux, continuous flow. And here's the crunch. Everything, including this being here, including each one of us. We've been born, and it's completely certain that at some point we'll die. This is something that none of us can escape from. And yet, how many of us really know that in our bones? It's interesting that I think for all of us, it takes something quite extreme for us to really realize that. Maybe the death of somebody very close to us, maybe a very serious accident or a near escape or a serious illness, something like that. And then, only then, do we begin to realize that we are mortal. This life is finite. And this is one of the things that the Buddha encourages us to reflect on regularly. I am of the nature to age, I am of the nature to sicken, I am of the nature to die. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Now, we might find this a very depressing message. It's not actually the sort of glad tidings, good news that one might expect. Other traditions have much more positive, much more affirming, encouraging ways of presenting the teachings. However, it's what we need to know. It's this recognition, this realization, that can engender an interest in how we live our lives. To realize it's important how we live our lives, that we can do a lot of good things in our lives. We can really, and we have this teaching, we can really explore, we can examine. We have the capacity to liberate ourselves using these teachings. So it's a very important insight. Rather than just frittering away our time, trying to find as much pleasure as possible without really taking any proper concern or regard for the consequences, we can think, what's the best thing I can do with my life? How can I really use this opportunity in the best possible way? For me, this brought a sense of great joy. It also made me very interested in really considering what was important. I mean, I'd been a nun for how many years? 20 years or so. And it was actually the last time I came on pilgrimage in India, when I, completely by chance, travelling on a train, which I wasn't supposed to be on, but somehow or other we'd landed up on this train from Varanasi up to Gorakhpur, and we were going to go to Lumbini. We'd actually been told there was a luxury coach from Bodh Gaya direct to Lumbini, and so we were going to get the luxury coach, but the way things happen sometimes is that things don't work out according to plan, so we ended up going to Patna, and then from Patna to Varanasi, and from Varanasi we got on this train. And my companion and I, we were sitting on the train, we stopped at a station, and there were three young fellas, and they started passing things through the window because there were three seats opposite us, and they wanted to reserve the seats. And so we put the things down on the seats for them, and they got on the train and sat down opposite. Nice young fellas. We didn't talk to them at first. And then I noticed that one of them was palm reading. He was looking at the others, his companion's hands, and he was kind of telling them something about their palms. And it was a very long journey. And so me and my friend, we thought, oh, well. And so after he'd finished with his friends, showed him our palms. And he had a look at my hand, and he said, oh. He told me a few things that nobody else could have known, which was a bit interesting. And then he said, yeah, and your lifeline. Yeah, your lifeline's quite short, actually. He said, yeah, you'll probably live to about 50. And then he kind of carried on, and I sort of gulped. And then afterwards he said, yes, and so how old are you? And I said, 50. And he said, oh, very important time for you. So that kind of stayed with me. I think that was probably the most important thing that happened on the pilgrimage, because it was not something I could ignore. I wasn't going to take it too seriously, but at the same time, it was a kind of a message. It got me thinking, okay, Chandasiri, what is really important? What is really important? interestingly, a few months after I came back from pilgrimage, I did have an illness and I did nearly die, which was like a kind of confirmation of the fact, Chandasiri, you get your act together. And I've always been very, very grateful for that, because just thinking, pondering, reflecting, it actually caused me to totally turn around all my values. And you might be a bit surprised when I tell you this, but I'd always assumed, the way I was brought up was that you put everybody else first and yourself last. And in my monastic life, that was what I did. I served, I did everything I could to support the community, and I didn't really pay very much attention to this. And I was kind of puzzled. I couldn't understand because, it sort of seemed as though I was doing all the right things. And somehow or other, I didn't really have very much joy. I mean, I knew I should have joy because I'd given a lot. For 20 years I'd served, I'd done all kinds of good things in the community, and yet there wasn't that sense of joy. It was kind of almost as though the heart was kind of a bit sort of dried up, like a sort of shriveled up prune. There wasn't really a sense of fullness and joy. So this had always been a bit of a puzzle to me. However, with this palmist and with this illness, I began to think, well, maybe I've got it the wrong way round. Maybe rather than putting everybody else first and this one last, maybe I need to put this one first. Not that I would disregard anybody else, but that this needs care. It needs care, it needs respect, it needs kindness. And so I kind of reversed my priorities. I changed it around and came up with a very, very simple formulation that this one was first, second was my sisters and brothers in the monastic community, third was everybody else. Not that I was going to in any way not do my best to serve everybody, but that this had to be the priority, this had to come first. So any decision, any plan, I would consider what's going to work for this one. And so I also decided I was never going to do anything I didn't want to do, which again is a bit shocking for people. But basically what that means, and a lot of people thank me when I talk about this, because I think we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We feel we don't want to let somebody down. We feel that's expected. We have to do our duty. And as a daughter of the Buddha, as a disciple of the Buddha, I realized that my duty is to practice according to the Buddha's teachings, is to be a good example of a disciple of the Buddha, not to run around and to totally exhaust myself out of an idea of what the right thing to do is. It's a rather subtle distinction, and I hope it's not. I hope I can explain it in a way that is clear, because I feel it's actually very important. And in a sense, all of you coming on retreat is like doing the best for yourselves in a very good way. Just actually learning how to resolve the suffering in your own heart. I mean, what better thing is that? Rather than reading about it and telling everybody else how to do it when you can't do it yourself, learn how to do it yourself. And then you can speak with authority about these things. Then you really know. So I always consider it's really important for everybody to take time to attend to the heart. A lot of people say, I don't have time, so many things to do. Well, there may be so many things to do, but make this the priority, because if you do that, then you'll find you'll enjoy doing all of the other things in a totally different way. I chose the subject of the retreat of kindness and anatta, and this evening I think the talk is going to be mostly about kindness. And when I talk about kindness, I had a conversation with Deepti about this, because my understanding of kindness, the equivalent, is metta, well-wishing. And with each of the Brahma Viharas, which I'm sure I'll talk about it during the time we're here together, my sense is that we always have to begin here. So we talk about having metta, having kindness, and we have the Buddha's words on loving kindness. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart one should cherish all living beings. And sometimes I think when we hear that, we think all living beings except this one. But actually, that's not the case. It's all living beings, including this one. We include ourselves. Because unless we're able to nourish ourselves, nourish our own hearts, keep our own heart nicely topped up with kindness, if we do that, then the kindness just comes out naturally. We don't have to think about it. It just happens. It's like filling up a cup and just letting it overflow, rather than trying to squeeze the last little ounce of kindness out of a dried up little orange that really hasn't got much juice left in it at all. Like putting petrol in your car or charging your mobile phone. You have to charge it up in order for it to be able to serve, to be able to offer, to be able to care. I'm watching everybody coming in from having picked up Sister Kemaka. She's resting, is she? Oh. Good. So I'm quite excited about that. I'm not so familiar with Indian culture and how you've all been raised. I'm imagining in some ways it's similar to ours, but there may be some differences. One of the things that can happen in Western culture is that people don't really know how to care for themselves and respect themselves in a very good way. In fact, a lot of people that I speak to really dislike themselves and don't think very highly of themselves. We tend to be very self-critical. And it can sort of seem like a virtue. It can kind of be mistaken for a kind of humility. Oh yes, I'm not really very good. I'm no good. They're all much better than me, and I'm no good. And certainly that was a little bit how I was raised. And over time you come to see how harmful this is, because we cultivate a habit of self-disparagement. Very critical. Whenever you do anything, as soon as you've done it, there's the kind of voice of the critic that comes in and says, oh, you didn't do that very well, you should have done that better, you could have given more, you weren't generous enough. How could you make such a stupid mistake? I really hope this isn't how you were brought up, but maybe for some of you it was. I don't know. And just this sense of being very harsh and very critical, having very, very high standards for ourselves. And very ready to forgive other people. If somebody comes and says, oh, I did this terrible thing, we'll say, well, that's all right, Well, I'm sure you did the best you could, and maybe you were a bit tired or not feeling well. That's all right. Just learn how to forgive yourself and begin again. We can be very, very kind to other people, and yet with ourselves we can be so harsh. And so this is one of the things I realized was how little self-respect and kindness I was showing to myself. And so I actually had to make a practice of being kind to this one. And as I said, as I learned how to do that, and sort of that the heart began to fill up, then it was easier. Well, even it was easier to be kinder to everybody. One of the things that people sometimes tell me is that they can be very kind to some people, but there are some people they just can't. Some people who just drive them nuts. And certainly this has been something I've experienced. Why does that person drive me nuts? Why is it that I feel so irritated and cross when I see that person? And with a little bit of introspection and pondering, and it was quite humbling, actually, to realize that very often the ones that we really don't like and that we can't be kind to are the ones who are quite an accurate mirror of some difficulty that we have. There's something in ourselves that we haven't really accepted. So this makes the showing metta, showing kindness to ourselves even more important, because it's no good if we can only be kind to the ones we like. Like the Buddha invites us to cultivate a heart of kindness towards all beings, to cherish all beings, to love all beings in the way that we would care for ourselves. So can we do that? And if not, why not? We don't hate ourselves for not being able to do it, but we take an interest in that. We want to know, we want to understand, because we want to free the heart from all the things that cause us to be mean and stingy and selfish and unpleasant to one another. It all sounds very easy. Yes, of course, you love everybody. We should love everybody. Sometimes people say that to me. Yes, we have to love everybody. And but it's much easier said than done. I think maybe everybody has discovered that. But that's all right. That's all right, because when we enter into this path of practice, we have an opportunity to investigate. We want to learn about the different ways that we cause ourselves suffering. And to do that, we have to look very closely at our own minds and our own struggles. I was told some of you I grew up as a Christian in a Christian family, and in fact I was very devout. And I remember at one time just being really puzzled because, I wanted to be good. I wanted to be good and kind and loving and generous, never to be mean and nasty and jealous and irritable and grumpy and doubtful and fearful and all of these things. And yet I really didn't know how to do it. And I was so grateful when I came to the Buddha's teachings, which encourages this reflection on impermanence, suffering. So I've talked about these two. And then anatta, not self. What this means for me in regard to these difficult mind states is that I don't need to identify with them. If I have a moment of jealousy, a moment of irritation, a moment of anger even, a moment of fear, a moment of doubt, boredom, confusion, joy, whatever it might be, these are just passing conditions. They arise and they cease in consciousness. We don't need to grab hold of them as part of our identity, because they're part of the flow of experience. We can witness them. We have the capacity to observe them, but we don't need to identify with them. This is something that we really come to gradually. I hope it makes sense as I say it right now, but in our experience, because of the way that we've been conditioned, the way we've grown up, our habit is to identify with these things very strongly. Every time anything happens, we kind of add it on to our mental CV. This is me. I've done this, so I'm like that. I've done this, so I'm like that. And we can end up actually terribly confused about what we are, because sometimes we think we're wonderful, and sometimes we think we're terrible. And so we begin to think, well, what am I? And it can be quite hard to discern. But according to the Buddha's teachings, you're not any of that anyway. So don't worry about it. These are all changing conditions, part of the human experience. And we have the capacity to bear witness to that. So in our practice of letting go, it's about letting go of the identification with any condition of mind or body. So we don't even have to worry about our bodies. Isn't that great? We don't have to worry that it's not the most beautiful body in the world, or the youngest, or the most athletic, and we don't have the highest intelligence. We don't have to worry about that either. This is what we have. This is what we've been born with. It's going through its life. It's doing its best. And it's trying not to make a problem about its flaws. All the little things that we don't like our bodies. Too fat, too thin, blemishes here and there. Stiff, achy, not able to hear very well, not able to see very well. All these things. We don't have to worry about that. This is just part of the human experience. So we have a chance to learn. This human opportunity is a wonderful opportunity to learn about what it is to be a human being, to learn about suffering, to learn all the ways that we manage to make life difficult for ourselves, and to learn how to not do that, to cultivate a habit of letting go of all the dukkha, all the struggle, all the suffering. So there's a very nice question today, actually, about wanting liberation. Because I've already talked about desire and about letting go of desire, and I can't remember exactly how the question was formulated, but I know I didn't actually answer that bit of it, because and it is a very important bit, because the Buddha talked about the suffering that causes, the desire that causes suffering. Those are the desires that need to be let go of, relinquished. But there's also desire that leads us to the ending of suffering, the desire for liberation. And it's interesting, one time when I was living in Edinburgh, and we invited Ajahn to come to Edinburgh with Ajahn Sumedho, and there were 2 or 3 other monks, and they came, and I had this really burning question that I needed to ask Ajahn Chah, and the question was something like, can you be too greedy for Dhamma? Because at that time I was just so inspired. I was just so hungry. I just couldn't have enough. And his response was very interesting and very helpful. He said, well, is it causing you suffering? And actually I was happy to say, well, actually, no, it wasn't. I was extremely fortunate to be in a position where I didn't have people who were dependent on me. I was able to travel freely to where the teachings were happening, and I didn't have anything to stop me, in due course from becoming a nun. So I was free to immerse myself in it to the extent that I wished. Clearly, that's not always the case. For some of you, I know you have families, you have people who maybe would feel, would struggle with, if you made a fuller commitment than you already have to enter monastic life or something like that. And the good news is that, as a monk and nun, there's certain conventions that we follow, and we particular structures that support us in our practice. But the good news is that the Dhamma is available for everybody. Whatever your situation, whether you can come and hear teachings very frequently, whether you can meditate for hours each day or not, you can still practice. And so I encourage each of you to consider your lives and to consider ways that you can turn your life from being a situation where occasionally you come on retreat and practice and then go out and go back to your other obligations that you think of as not practice, and then save up lots of money so you can come and practice again, and instead to see it that your whole life is an opportunity to practice in this way. Every moment. As a layperson, of course, it's not quite so clear. There aren't quite the same forms of encouragement. Like in the monastery, if you don't show up for morning puja, then people want to know why you didn't get up. And people don't cook food in the evening, so there's no question about having supper. Not that I'm suggesting you go without supper when you go home, but there are ways of making your life into a life in Dhamma, whether a monk, nun, or as a layperson. This is one of the beauties of the Buddha's teachings, that he offered teachings for what he called the fourfold assembly. The monks, the nuns, lay women, lay men. That there's a way of practice for everybody, if you want it. And my sense is that having come on this retreat, it's obviously something that's important to you. Having survived, practiced diligently for a whole day, with the interest in continuing for more days, it's obviously something that matters to you. So I encourage you over these days to continue to practice as best you can, come to the meditations, to attend as best you can. If you fall asleep, don't worry about it, but make sure you wake up again. And I will try to kind of keep you awake. When you hear me say, open your eyes, sit up straight, that usually means wake up. Because I know how difficult it is. I really do. It's extremely difficult when you're a bit sleepy, when, breathing is not so interesting to start with. To start with, your mind you're used to being quite stimulated. Lots of things to think about, lots of exciting, interesting things. And when you've got 5 days of breathing, that's not terribly exciting. So this is why I'm trying to make it interesting and to encourage you, because what you'll find is that as your mind begins to settle a little bit, rather than making your mind settle, what I like to think of is enabling a settling of the mind. So you're not forcing it to be quiet. I mean, we can all force it to be quiet for a short while, and then probably if you keep doing that, you'll go crazy. So I suggest you don't try to do that, but see it as an enabling a settling. So rather than slamming on the brakes of your bicycle, you're just sort of gently squeezing them. So you're just gently slowing down. Every time you come back and are able to stay with one breath, just one breath, to enjoy one breath, that's just supporting a slowing, a settling. And if you find it helpful to use a word or a phrase, then, as I said, breathing in, breathing out. Another phrase I like to use is just, may I be well. This is like the kind of metta practice. Some of you may have done this. May I be well, or may this being be well. You can do that as well. It's just sort of encouraging a sense of softening, of settling, of well-being, of ease. Because it's when we're in a state of ease, a state of settledness, then we have the capacity to see much more clearly. Much more aware when we're at ease. If we're very tense, trying very, very hard, you don't actually see very much. You might be able to do wonderful, wonderful, amazing feats, things with your mind, but you don't really have much understanding. It feels very forced. There's a funny story I tell sometimes about the early days in our monastery. And Ajahn Sumedho was very inspired by a Zen practitioner, Zen teachers, who used to have these sesshin, these retreats, where they would meditate all day, continuously, And I think they didn't have walking meditation, a lot of sitting. And they would practice from, I think it was something like 2:30 in the morning till about 11 at night. Very, very intense. And they do it for weeks at a time. And he was very inspired by this. So he decided to introduce a rather more austere regime for our winter retreat. And I was actually at Chithurst for that year. And so it was another senior monk who was guiding the retreat. And the first evening, he kind of told us about this routine that we were going to follow. No breakfast. Morning puja, I think it was 3:30, the morning puja. And sitting up till 10 at night. So it wasn't quite as extreme as in the Zen tradition we'd heard about. And I remember him saying to us, he said, and if you're thinking of running away to Amaravati, they've got the same routine there. So anyway, we had this winter retreat, and we survived. And just. And I was quite curious the following year. So every winter we have a period of retreat, and it's usually, well, at that time I think it was either a month or 2 months. Now we have 3 months, but something like that. It was quite an extended time. And the following year I was at Amaravati and preparing for this time of retreat and sort of gearing myself up for these austerities, and was very surprised. The first evening, or the evening before we actually started, Ajahn Sumedho, he said, right, okay, well, make sure you have an early night, have a good rest, and we'll begin with, I think it was 5 o'clock, which was the normal time we got up. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then he kind of made the retreat into something really enjoyable. And at breakfast time, he would tell stories. He'd have us all laughing and telling. He's a wonderful storyteller, as you might have discovered. He'd tell all these wonderful stories, really funny stories. And then tea time would be another time. There'd be more stories and relaxing and just being around him in a very nice way. Evening puja time, there'd be Dhammadesana, wonderful talk, and we'd really enjoy that. And what was really, really interesting to me was that if you asked me which retreat was the most fruitful, it was definitely the second one. In a subtle way, it was actually much tougher. Because when you're relaxed, you have a chance to look into your mind and to examine things really closely. Things that maybe you'd rather not see, you see and you look at and you learn through. Whereas the first retreat, the austere retreat, we were so kind of, what would you say, wired up that we didn't see anything. We survived, but we didn't have much understanding. So it's quite interesting that the Buddha talks about the middle way. It's quite interesting that within our particular tradition, we call this the middle way. So some people think it's very austere. You know, you don't eat afternoon. That seems very austere. But actually, it's okay to be comfortable in a bodily sense. It's okay for the mind to be comfortable. And at the same time, as we practice, as we investigate, what we find is that we get away with less and less. That we have to be honest with ourselves, that we have to face up to the things that we find difficult about ourselves, that we have the opportunity, we have to keep letting go, letting go, letting go. So I'm very interested in the place of kindness, because I think, certainly for myself, the more I can practice kindness towards this being, the more there's a sense of inner ease, and the more there's the capacity to look into the mind and to see all of the little ways that we hold on, all of the little struggles that we get ourselves involved in, all the little ways that we create a sense of self. And little by little, we are able to see where and how we can let go. So in this way, we seem to have brought together kindness and letting go, or anatta, not self. So we'll continue to ponder these themes over the next days, and what I would like to do is to end my reflection at this point and to offer this for your contemplation and well-being, and as an encouragement to really value your lives and to value this opportunity we have to share this time of practice together. This coming together of beings in this human realm. Really remarkable, isn't it? How we all got here. So I offer this for your well-being and perfect liberation as soon as possible. Page 154.
Handamayam dhamma kathaya sadhukaram dadamase. Now let us express our approval of this Dhamma teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu anumodami.
So I'd like to suggest that we have a short sitting now, just to allow everything to settle. And then I'll hand over to Deepti to offer the Hindi. I'm afraid you've got a very big job this evening. Okay, so let's sit quietly together for 10 minutes or so. And then we'll do the closing homage.